competition. Jordan and the European Union announced rules of origin deal to facilitate the entry of Jordanian exports to the EU market. The U.S. Secretary of State says the battlefield momentum in Iraq and Syria has shifted against Daesh. And the Turkish president chairs an emergency meeting with his National Security Council in a bid to shore up stability after Friday's attempted coup. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. His Royal Highness Prince Faisal the Regent visited the tomb of King Abdullah I, marking the 65th anniversary of his death. Prince Faisal recited verses from the Holy Quran and laid a wreath on the tomb. Several royal family members, the Prime Minister, senior officials and officers also visited the tomb, where they laid wreaths and recited verses from the Quran. Jordan and the European Union announced an amendment on simplifying the rules of origin to facilitate the entry of Jordan's exports to the EU market, as well as €747 million grant for the years 2016-2017. During a press conference attended by Prime Minister Hani al-Mulki, the Minister of Planning and International Cooperation, the Minister of State for Media Affairs, and the EU Ambassador to Jordan, the two sides launched the second Renewable Energy Program and Energy Efficiency Program. Under this program, the EU will provide Jordan with €90 million. Prime Minister Hani al-Mulki said the government is pushing ahead in taking necessary measures to implement decentralization in conformity with the royal directives. The Premier stressed during a visit to the Interior Ministry the importance of sustaining development process pursued by the ministry to improve every aspect of its security, administrative and technical work. Mulki said Jordan will continue carrying out comprehensive reform in all fields, and such reforms require all state institutions to take part in this national effort with utmost efficiency and readiness. Minister of Interior Salam Hamad said the concept of comprehensive security in all its aspects is the governor's key task through reaching out to citizens' views and observations and finding solutions to their problems. Hamad said his ministry has drawn up a security plan to ensure the security and proper functioning of the electoral process. Prime Minister Hani al-Mulki highlighted the need for a transport sector that serves neighborhoods inside cities as well as public and private schools. Mulki said the project would provide job opportunities for citizens in those cities and reduce the unemployment rate in case it succeeded. While stressing the need for a transport map for all cities in the kingdom, the Prime Minister highlighted the importance of the private sector's participation in this important project. He also requested concerned officials to draw up a plan and find solutions for problems facing the transport sector in the kingdom. The director of the Land Transport Regulatory Commission presented a briefing on a short-term action plan to enhance the public transport sector that includes 17 projects in the cities of Amman, Irbid, Zarqa and Madaba. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said the battlefield momentum in Iraq and Syria has shifted against Daesh. Kerry said the international community must now also confront the challenge of stabilizing newly liberated areas. Kerry addressed an Iraq donor meeting of 24 countries in Washington, which is expected to raise more than $2 billion. The United Nations is preparing for what it says will be the largest humanitarian relief operation so far this year. The world body said it needed an immediate $280 million to begin pre-positioning supplies, tens of thousands of tents, and hundreds of mobile health clinics.
There's nobody at this table who would argue that the momentum hasn't shifted. It has shifted. And Daesh has been driven out of almost half the territory that once occupied in Iraq. Tikrit has been liberated. 100,000 people went back to Tikrit to repopulate. Ramadi liberated, people going back to Ramadi. Fallujah most recently liberated, people going back.
Defense ministers of the anti-Daesh terrorist group coalition met at Joint Base Andrews near Washington to take stock of the fight against the group in Mosul, Iraq. Iraqi United Nations and U.S. officials said the battle for Mosul is expected to be difficult, but the aftermath could be tougher. Plans are still being finalized to provide urgent humanitarian aid and restore basic services and security for residents and as many as 2.4 million displaced people. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan chaired an emergency meeting with his National Security Council in Ankara in a bid to tighten control after Friday's attempted coup. The government is expected to announce emergency measures to try to shore up stability and prevent damage to the economy as it purges thousands of members of the security forces, judiciary, civil service, and academia after the failed coup bid.
Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan says there's a virus infecting all state institutions and that he plans to clean it up. A purge of those institutions is already underway. And after last week's coup attempt, he's called an emergency meeting with his National Security Council aimed at restoring stability. Around 50,000 soldiers, police, judges, civil servants, and teachers have been suspended or detained since the military coup attempt Friday night, when soldiers commandeering fighter jets, military helicopters, and tanks tried to overthrow the government. More than 230 people were killed. Erdogan is blaming the network of U.S.-based cleric Fethullah Gulen for the attempted coup. Turkey wants him extradited to face trial, joining the hundreds of other suspects now being prosecuted for their alleged involvement in the plot.
Dozens of mourners buried a Palestinian boy who was killed during a clash with Israeli occupation forces in the occupied West Bank. A Palestinian ministry spokesman said Muhyi Sidqi, aged 12, died in a Palestinian hospital of a wound inflicted by a projectile that struck his chest and caused heart failure. Mourners carried the body draped in a Palestinian flag into the local mosque before marching towards the cemetery for burial. A blast in the southern Yemeni city of Aden killed 4 soldiers and wounded 6 in an attack claimed by Daesh. The city's security administration said the terrorist group said it had detonated an explosion amongst a group of soldiers in the port city. Security officials and other witnesses said the blast was set off by a suicide bomber detonating an explosive vest. One eyewitness said the bomb, which hit a checkpoint in the central Caltex area of the city, was planted in a plastic bag by a roadside. President Francois Hollande said 3 French soldiers were killed in a helicopter accident in Libya during an intelligence gathering mission in the North African state. They are the first confirmed Western military casualties since it became known this year that special forces were operating on the ground in Libya. Paris took a leading role in the NATO air campaign that helped rebels overthrow autocratic leader Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. French special forces, in conjunction with Britain and the United States, have been advising forces loyal to Eastern Libyan commander Khalifa Haftar for more than 2 years. U.S. tennis player Sam Querrey gave his countryman Bjorn Frantangelo a birthday present he might not want to remember by beating him in the second round of the City Open in Washington, D.C. The victory meant Querrey avenged his loss in the French Open to Frantangelo. The 8th seed had to fight back after he lost the first set, with 23-year-old Frantangelo taking the tiebreak before Querrey rallied to a 6-7, 6-4, 6-4 win. Britain's Chris Froome took another big step towards a third Tour de France title when he dropped his main rivals on the finale of the 17th stage, a 184-kilometer mountain trek through the Swiss Alps won by Russian Eleanor Sakharin. Froome attacked inside the final 2 kilometers in the last ascent, and Dutchman Bok Mollema, second overall, as well as last year's runner-up Nairo Quintana, could not follow. The Briton finished on the wheel of former teammate Richie Porte, the Australian emerging as a potential podium finisher in Paris. And finally, it remains fair in the hilly areas tonight and moderate across the kingdom. Tomorrow, a slight drop in temperature is expected. Therefore, normal summer conditions prevail in most regions. Winds will be northwesterly moderate to brisk, stirring dust in the desert areas. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect a hot day tomorrow with northerly moderate winds and calm seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To end the news, here's a reminder of our top stories. Jordan and the European Union announced rules of origin deal to facilitate the entry of Jordanian exports to the EU market. The U.S. Secretary of State says the battlefield momentum in Iraq and Syria has shifted against Daesh. And the Turkish president chairs an emergency meeting with his National Security Council in a bid to shore up stability after Friday's attempted coup. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Nancy Khair. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.